From folklore and fairies
to monsters and mysteries, it came from the Maritimes. Her name can be seen on the Wikipedia page for List of People Who Disappeared Mysteriously at Sea. My co-host, Chelsea.
Singing a song to lure you out to the ocean. My co-host, Evon. That's beautiful. I don't know about all of you, but that's all I would need to jump in the sea. Hi, everyone. Welcome to It Came From The Maritimes, an Atlantic Canada folklore podcast. So today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, mermaids. When I was a kid, I may or may not have thought I could turn into a mermaid if I focused hard enough. As a result of countless hours spent in the water, I am now an excellent swimmer, but I have not successfully turned into a mermaid as of yet. I feel like when we were kids, Evon had to often put up with me just refusing to leave bodies of water.
There's more than one occasion where I would be like, okay, it's time to go. And you would just hear Chelsea in the lakes yelling, I'm a mermaid!
I still have hopes, folk. That's the reason I go to the beach so often. Now, tales of mermaids have been around for thousands of years throughout the world. The first story I was able to track down about these sea creatures goes as far back as 1000 BC to a Syrian legend in which the goddess of fertility, Atargatis, throws herself into a lake and turns into a mermaid. Nova Scotia is surrounded by water, so it's no wonder that tales of the merfolk are a part of our province's lore. One thing that stood out to me was the consistency between descriptions of merfolk across different civilizations spanning centuries. Are you ready for this deep dive into Atlantic Canada mermaid sightings, Evon?
I'm always ready.
That's what we like to hear. The Mi'kmaq people have stories of the Sabawaelnu, which translates to halfway people or people of the water. Also, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. The upper half of their bodies are human, and the lower half are fish. These creatures are smaller in size than the average human. Apparently in 1870, there was a Sabawaelnu child spotted, and its head was only 3 inches in width. Now, these are considered benevolent creatures who, if treated well, will warn fishers of incoming storms through song. However, if you disrespect them, they will use their song to summon storms to punish you.
Oh, wow. So they sound almost similar to fairies in that sense.
Absolutely, like a strong sense of justice depending on how they're treated and respected.
It's really interesting.
Now, in Western folklore, mermaids are often associated with water nymphs. They're depicted as having human upper halves and fish tails, and they're beautiful yet dangerous creatures, luring people to their death through song, as Evon did in our introductions.
I know. I know everyone's trying to dive right into their phones.
Mermaids have been a prominent feature of seafaring lore for millennia. Mermaid tattoos on sailors are thought to help them control the seas, and mermaid figureheads on boats were thought to offer protection. Here in Nova Scotia, merfolk have inspired a brand of vodka and sparkling wine. Both are lovely. Evon, I apologize for not having the foresight to have prepared you a cocktail made with this merfolk-inspired alcoholic beverages.
It probably will help the recording go smoother without it.
That's it. We're early in the day, friends. Now, the first documented Canadian mermaid sighting was off the coast of Newfoundland in the St. John's Harbour in the year 1610. Captain Richard Whitbourne and his crew saw what he described as a well-proportioned woman-like creature with a round head and hair-like streaks running down to its shoulders.
What a compliment.
I know, nothing like being called a well-proportioned woman-like creature. My husband should take notes.
A nice round head.
Right, and hair-like streaks. Ooh, what a charmer. Now, this creature was swimming towards him in his boat. As it approached, he saw its lower half was shaped like a broad-hooked arrow. It climbed onto their boat, and they couldn't tell its intentions, so one of his crew members hit it on the head, forcing it back into the water. They fled to land while this creature approached 2 other ships, which managed to outrun it. Now, there was another sighting in the St. John's Narrows in Newfoundland in 1912. This sighting was by Ringo Tatingo, and he had an experience in which a 12-foot-long mermaid tried to climb onto his dory. Ringo managed to get it off his boat by swinging his oar at it. He had said that his great-grandfather had reported seeing a mermaid of the same shape and size decades prior. So Evon and I have both spent a lot of time in the water because we were paddlers, and I have to say I'm glad a mermaid never tried to climb aboard. But Evon, didn't you once have a fish jump in your boat?
I did. We were down in Florida at the time on a training camp, actually, and it just hopped right into my boat. There were some local fishermen who had their fishing rods out, and I think they were a little jealous. I just had the fish coming right to me. But I know my friend cut his hand on its fin when he tried to get it out of the boat for me.
Those sharp scales, well, maybe it was a small mermaid.
I know. I mean, I should have taken the advice of these guys and just taken my paddle, whacked it on the head.
That's it. Saved yourself. Now, the second chronological sighting of a mermaid in Canada technically occurred outside of the Atlantic provinces, but I found it too interesting to not include. Why I found this one so interesting is because a drawing of the mermaid was included in the Codex Canadensis, a book of drawings completed by Louis Nicolas, who traveled across Canada from 1664 to 1674. His drawing depicts a creature with a human torso, a fishtail, scaly arms with additional fishtails for hands, and a long beard. The drawing is entitled Marine Monster Killed by the French on the Richelieu River in New France. I'm going to put a picture of the drawing up on our Instagram, but I'm going to show Evan right now.
That is quite the creature. You're right, it does have little fins for hands.
Scroll to the side of it because I just noticed, I wish I had seen this before our Coleman Frog episode. There's also a picture of a giant frog.
My French isn't great, so I can't really read the writing of it well, but...
It's also scrawled from like the 1660s.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And there's some sort of giant bug on there too.
There is. All the creatures.
Yeah.
Now, let's chat about a Nova Scotia mermaid sighting. In 1886, the small fishing community of Gabarus Cape Breton was put on the map for a mermaid sighting, the first documented in Nova Scotia, and the only one considered authentic to date. Here is an excerpt from the Cape Breton Eagle newspaper report from August 22nd. The fishermen of Gabarus Cape Breton have been excited over the appearance of a mermaid, seen in the waters by some fishermen a few days ago. While Mr. Bagnall, accompanied by several fishermen, was out in a boat, they observed floating on the surface of the water a few yards from them what they supposed to be a corpse. Approaching it for the purpose of taking it ashore, they observed it to move, when to their great surprise, it turned around in a sitting position and looked at them and disappeared. A few moments after, it appeared on the surface and again looked towards them, after which it disappeared altogether. The face, head, shoulders, and arms resembled those of a human being, but the lower extremities had the appearance of a fish. The back of its head was covered in a long, dark hair, resembling a horse's mane. The arms were shaped like human beings, except the fingers of one hand were very long. The color of the skin was not unlike that of other humans, but there was no doubt that the mysterious stranger is what is known as a mermaid, and the first one ever seen in Cape Breton waters. So interesting, eh? Like, it was quite the detailed account of the sighting.
Yeah, maybe I'm taking the wrong thing from this, but I'm very curious about the fingers of one hand being very long.
Well, that's it. Like, why just the one?
Yeah, so the other hand was presumably normal. Or maybe they just only saw one hand.
Well, that's it, because it was just a very specific mention.
Yeah.
Now, the only other mermaid sighting in Nova Scotia to gain attention was determined to be a hoax. In May 2021, a photo circulated online of a group of people on a beach, with a long creature laying on its side with a fish tail but human features such as arms, breasts, and long hair. It was accompanied by a caption saying it was taken in River John, Nova Scotia in 1918. It was revealed to be a digitally altered picture of a beached whale, edited by an artist who posted it on his social media feed. So I have the photo here, Evan.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not a super convincing looking mermaid.
No, it looks a lot more like a whale than a mermaid, I'll be honest.
It really does. I just remember the first time I saw it, I was like, River John, what? And then once you start looking, it's like, okay, understood.
Yeah.
Now, I have one final Atlantic Canada mermaid tale that's not a specific sighting, but a story told to Nova Scotia folklorist Mary Fraser. The story was told to her by Mary Macdonald and included in her book, Folklore of Nova Scotia. So in this story, an elderly man was walking on the beach and saw a mermaid arise from the water holding a beautiful shell. The man asked if he could have the shell, but the mermaid denied him because she could not return to the water without it. Upon hearing that, he stole it and buried it in his yard, trapping her on the land so that she was forced to marry his son and bear his children. The mermaid tried to embrace her new life, but missed the sea, always telling her children stories of her previous time in the ocean. One day her children were playing in the yard, and they discovered the shell's hiding place. They were so excited that they rushed to tell their mother. Upon finding the shell, she explained that she had to leave them, and that even though she loved them, she belonged to the ocean. Her children walked her to the shore, where they were greeted by dozens of mermaids eagerly awaiting her return to the ocean. And although they missed their mother, they never regretted giving her the shell that allowed her to return to her previous life. So this story, it was one of those ones that even in the Folklore of Nova Scotia book, Mary Fraser mentions that she's not sure if it was like a story that someone experienced or just a folktale passed down over generations. But it reminded me of Selkie lore. Now, I'm not going to share too much because we just might be covering Selkies in the future. But essentially, Selkies are a seal and human hybrid that exist as seals in the water, but can shed their pelt to come on land.
Honestly, when you were telling that story, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, I'm pretty sure I have heard this exact same story, except with a seal pelt and a Selkie.
Exactly.
Like, I think in a different Nova Scotia folklore book.
Yeah, definitely similarities between those stories.
Oh, for sure.
Now, let's chat about a few of the theories behind mermaid sightings. And these are just a couple of them. If anyone knows any more theories or has any mermaid sightings of their own, please always feel free to reach out to us through our email or the Instagram page. We'd love to hear them.
I have a mermaid sighting right in front of me here.
Am I finally a mermaid?
You made it.
That's all I've ever wanted. Now, in southern climates, manatees are thought to be the source of many mermaid sightings. They often get seaweed tangled around their heads that resembles long flowing hair. Now, I know Evon on these Florida training camp had a few of his own close encounters with manatees. Any mistaken mermaid identities at the time, Evon?
I don't think so. I'd say I wouldn't look at a manatee and think, oh, look, that upper half of it looks like a beautiful woman.
No, I would need to be pretty dehydrated and perhaps have indulged in a few beverages before I made that mistake. They have pretty distinctly large heads.
The heads don't look very human to me.
No, and there's no shoulders, which are characteristic of many.
Yeah.
Now, in the Atlantic Ocean, a lot of mermaid sightings are theorized to be seals. When seals lift their rounded heads and shoulders from the water, they could resemble a human from afar. And they also hold their youth close to them as a human would. When you consider the optical illusions that staring at the water and sun can produce, and the fact that many mermaid sightings occur when sailors were away for months at a time, certainly possible that they could make this mistake.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the one description earlier that specifically said a round head.
That's the thing.
And
We're getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and these sailors, I mean, they're probably all have their teeth falling out because of scurvy at this point, so they're probably not in the best state of mind.
It's very true. Now, are mermaids real? Only 5% of the ocean has been explored, so I think it's more than possible that mermaids are thriving somewhere in the deep blue sea. Evon, what do you think? Are mermaids real?
I mean, like I said, I've got you right here, so I know mermaids are real.
Now, as a little treat, I've prepared just a short little mermaid quiz for Evon. So we have a few mermaid-related questions for him. The first of which is, what is the difference between mermaids and sirens?
I feel like sirens are much more associated with like the singing to bring the boats into the rocks. I know mermaids are to an extent. Are sirens sometimes also like have bird-like qualities?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, so that's it. So mermaids are consistently half human, half fish, whereas sirens are actually half human, half bird.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was actually, so I had read that once before and kind of like slipped out of my memory, but one of our Instagram friends and I were chatting about it recently. So yeah.
Neat.
Yes, so that is question 1. Well done, Evon. Now this one is a little more obscure. I mentioned above that mermaid tattoos are thought to give sailors control over the ocean. What did Nova Scotian sailors get tattooed on themselves to protect them while they were away at sea?
This might be more of a confirmation bias, but anchors?
No, but I'm sure there's more than a few anchors. This is very random, so it's pigs.
Oh, I would never have guessed that.
So there was a saying in Helen Creighton's book, Blue Nose Magic, that multiple sailors said that was pig on the knee, safety at sea. So people would get a pig tattooed on their knee.
Huh. Wouldn't a knee tattoo be pretty painful too?
Oh yeah, because it's right over the bone. I would not want one.
No, that's an interesting one.
Now just one more for you. So do you know which American circus owner created a famous mermaid hoax?
Is that P.T. Barnum?
Yes. Do you know any details of the hoax?
I really don't. I just know that was the only circus owner name that I knew, so.
Well, it was a good guess then. So he toured a creature that he called the Fiji mermaid, which was actually a taxidermied monkey attached to a fishtail.
You know what? I've seen pictures of this.
It's quite disturbing. Do yourself a not favor and Google it if you so choose. Well, that's the end of our quiz. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of It Came From The Maritimes. You can find us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at It Came From The Maritimes, on X at ICFT Maritimes. And if you have any Atlantic Canada folklore you'd like to see covered in future episodes, email us at itcamefromthemaritimes@gmail.com. So we like to end each episode by sharing a piece of Nova Scotia superstition that we found in our reading. Please don't ever take this advice seriously. It's just a bit of fun. So Evan, do you have a folklore tip for us today?
I do. This week's folklore tip is, it's bad luck to sing tragic songs on board a ship.
That it is. Thanks for joining.
Bye.